Look at this animal. You've seen it before. You think you know what it is. A crocodile. Ancient. Unchanged. A living fossil from a time when the world was simpler. That's what most people believe. That's exactly wrong. Because what you're looking at isn't a relic of primitive life. It's the last survivor of the most dominant lineage of land animals that ever lived. A dynasty so powerful, so ecologically complete, that for 50 million years, longer than the entire reign of the dinosaurs after they rose to dominance, the ancestors of this creature ruled every ecosystem on Earth. Not the swamps, not just the rivers. Every mountain, every forest, every coastal plain, every predator niche from the tropics to the high latitudes. They were bipedal hunters that looked exactly like dinosaurs, armored herbivores that grazed like cattle. Apex predators so large they preyed on what would later become the ancestors of the long-necked giants we call sauropods. And then, in a single geological night, they were gone. But here's the question that modern science is only now beginning to answer honestly. Did the dinosaurs beat them? Or did something else happen entirely? To understand what came next, you have to understand what came first. 252 million years ago, something happened that makes every other extinction in Earth's history look minor by comparison. Scientists call it the Permian-Triassic extinction, the Great Dying, and the name earns every word. In a geological instant, 90 to 96% of all ocean species vanished. 70% of land vertebrates disappeared. The world didn't just lose animals, it lost entire ecosystems. Food webs that had taken hundreds of millions of years to build collapsed in what may have been, by geological standards, less than 100,000 years. The Earth that remained was nearly silent. Into that silence, two groups of animals began to rise. Both belonged to the same broader lineage, the archosaurs, the ruling reptiles. And roughly 250 million years ago, that lineage split. One branch would eventually become pterosaurs, dinosaurs, and ultimately birds. The other branch became the pseudosuchians, the crocodile-line archosaurs. And for the next 50 million years, it was the crocodile side of that split that ran the world. Imagine standing in the late Triassic. The supercontinent Pangaea is still whole. The air is warmer than today. There is no ice at the poles. The interior of the landmass is vast, arid, and brutally seasonal. And across this world, the pseudosuchians have become something extraordinary. They are not the slow, low-slung, belly-dragging creatures that come to mind when you think of a crocodile. The Triassic pseudosuchians stood upright. Many walked on two legs. Some had sails running down their backs. Some had no teeth at all. Some were armored herbivores the size of large pigs, filling the same ecological niche that cattle fill today, and that ankylosaurs would fill 100 million years later. Evolution was running the same experiment twice, simultaneously, in two unrelated groups of animals. But the predators are where this story becomes almost impossible to believe. Meet Fasolasuchus tenax. Found in what is now northwestern Argentina, Fasolasuchus reached 8 to 10 meters in length, roughly 30 feet. It weighed an estimated 2 to 3 tons. It walked with an upright posture, supported by a spine built for active locomotion. Vertebral structures that bone specialists say belong to a fast, powerful, erect-postured predator. This animal holds a distinction that no dinosaur has ever claimed. Fasolasuchus tenax is the largest non-dinosaurian terrestrial predator ever documented in Earth's history, and it shared its world with early dinosaurs, not as equals. The first dinosaurs were small, restricted to specific environments, ecologically marginal. While Fasolasuchus hunted early sauropodomorphs, the distant ancestors of Brachiosaurus and Diplodocus, those same future giants were, at the time, prey. Small prey, in a world that belonged to someone else entirely. But Fasolasuchus wasn't even the strangest part of this story. In the American Southwest, a creature called Poposaurus walked on 2 legs, with hind limbs anatomically convergent on theropod dinosaurs. Same basic structure, same locomotor pattern, completely different family tree. Paleontologists confirmed its bipedal locomotion, not just from bones, but from trackway evidence. Fossilized footprints that showed this animal moving exactly the way a meat-eating dinosaur would move. And then there is perhaps the most astonishing case in the entire fossil record. Scientists once discovered an animal in Texas they were certain was a dinosaur. It was bipedal, toothless, and beaked, almost identical to the ornithomimids, the ostrich-like dinosaurs that would appear 100 million years later. They named it Shuvosaurus. Then they looked more carefully at the anatomy. It wasn't a dinosaur at all. It was a pseudosuchian, a member of the crocodile lineage. The crocodile family had independently invented the beaked, bipedal herbivore body plan, one that dinosaurs wouldn't evolve for another 100 million years. Evolution, it turns out, has favorite solutions, and the crocodile lineage found them first. There's one more thing scientists discovered about these animals that rewrites everything you thought you knew about cold-blooded reptiles: bone histology. The study of microscopic growth patterns in fossilized bone tells us something extraordinary. The ancestral archosaurs, the common ancestors of both the crocodile-line and the bird line, appear to have been warm-blooded, endothermic, metabolically active. The cold-blooded crocodile lying on a riverbank today evolved that cold-bloodedness secondarily. It gave up a trait its ancestors had. The Triassic pseudosuchians weren't the sluggish, sun-dependent reptiles of the popular imagination. The bone evidence from Fasolasuchus and Prehistoric suggests fast growth rates consistent with active metabolisms. These were the apex predators of a warm world, and they were built to match it. For 50 million years, this dynasty held. And then, 201 million years ago, the ground beneath Pangaea began to tear apart. What scientists now call the Central Atlantic Magmatic Province. CAMP was one of the largest volcanic events in Earth's history. Across what would become the Atlantic Ocean basin, fissures opened in the Earth. Lava didn't erupt from single peaks. It poured from enormous rifts across thousands of kilometers of terrain. 3 million cubic kilometers of material, erupting in pulses over hundreds of thousands of years. But it wasn't the lava that killed. It was what came with it. Toxic mercury rained down from the ash clouds. Evidence of this is still preserved in the fossil record as chemical spikes at the Triassic-Jurassic boundary. And the eruption sent volcanic ejecta into the upper atmosphere, blocking sunlight, collapsing food chains, and this is where the science gets newly precise: cooling the planet. A 2024 study in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences proposed that the primary kill mechanism wasn't heat. It was cold, a volcanic winter. And that changes everything about who survived and why. Large pseudosuchians were broadly distributed across the warmer latitudes of Pangaea. They were the dominant forms in the tropics and subtropics, the ecosystems that received the most severe disruption from the cooling event. Some of them may have retained ancestral warm-bloodedness. But even so, large body size is a vulnerability when food chains collapse and temperatures plunge. The small crocodilomorphs, the ancestors of modern crocodiles, may have survived precisely because they were small enough and possibly flexible enough metabolically to endure in refuge environments. Perhaps in water, which buffers temperature extremes more than land. Perhaps at latitudes that were already cooler and therefore less radically disrupted. And the dinosaurs? The survivors appear to have been concentrated at higher latitudes, cooler regions that were already insulated from the most dramatic temperature shifts. Dinosaurs were also developing insulating body coverings, the proto-feathers that would eventually define birds. A volcanic winter punishes the uninsulated and the large. It rewards the small, the insulated, and the geographically fortunate. 76% of all species on Earth went extinct in this event. Every large pseudosuchian disappeared. The rewrote, the etosaurs, the ornithosuchids, the phytosaurs, the crocodile-shaped predators that had independently evolved the gharial body plan. Gone. All of it. Gone. What remained, crawling out of that catastrophe into the early Jurassic, were the small crocodilomorphs and the dinosaurs. Not because the dinosaurs were better, because they were luckier. The National Park Service, in its official paleontology materials, puts it this way. Dinosaurs survived the mass extinction at the end of the Triassic, but that doesn't mean they were superior to the animals that went extinct. 50 million years of dominance ended not by competition, not by evolutionary failure, but by where you happened to be standing when the sky changed. In 2024, paleontologists working in Nevada described a new species from rocks 247 million years old, found alongside the fossils of open ocean predators. Ichthyosaurs, ammonites, creatures of the deep, was a terrestrial pseudosuchian that had no business being there. It had ranged to the very edge of the ancient Panthalasan Ocean, the vast sea that covered most of the Western Hemisphere. The crocodile lineage had reached everywhere. One of the scientists involved noted that while a lot of the public's fascination with the Triassic focuses on the origin of dinosaurs, it's really the pseudosuchians that were doing interesting things at the beginning of the Mesozoic. Interesting things. That may be the most understated sentence in modern paleontology. We live in the world the dinosaurs built. Every bird overhead, every sparrow, every hawk, every hummingbird is a living dinosaur. The Jurassic, Cretaceous, the age of giants, the age of feathered theropods. All of it traces back to one catastrophic night when the competition was eliminated and the survivors inherited an empty world. But the crocodile on the riverbank asks a different question. If the camp eruptions had not occurred, if the volcanic winter had not come, what would Earth look like today? Would the pseudosuchians still be here, still diversifying, still running the same evolutionary experiments that gave them bipedal predators and armored herbivores and toothless beaked omnivores 50 million years before dinosaurs found those same solutions? We don't know. What we do know is that the animal lying in the sun right now, ancient and still and patient, is the last living thread of a dynasty that held the world for longer than the dinosaurs ever did. It didn't. It lose. It survived. And there's a difference between those two things that the fossil record makes clear, even if the history books haven't caught up yet.